The Shinomura battles Godzilla fiercely, using her regenerative capabilities to keep the fight going against Godzilla's atomic breath that is able to burn her body away with every blast. At this rate, the battle isn't going in her favor. Godzilla would eventually win this if the Shinomura kept doing the strategy. Even when she was able to split in half to make two, it didn't work. This monster, this creature, it was too powerful for her. As the fight echoes on throughout the lands and the oceans, Shinomura's body is weakening, and she needs to survive. So, seeing that she can't win this fight, she escapes into the sky, changing history. I am Azarus. I am the Watcher. Embark with me on this journey as we explore the question, what if the Shinomura survived? The Shinomura is in the air, but as she tries to think of something new, Godzilla grabs the Shinomura and throws her into the ground, about to unleash his atomic breath. The Shinomura quickly leaps out of the way and flies behind the beast, strangling him with her tail in hopes to choke him out. But Godzilla quickly grabs her tail and rips it off, burning it away so it can regenerate. Running out of options, the Shinomura ascends to the sky to buy herself time. If she keeps running, then Godzilla will only keep chasing. She needed to somehow end this here and now, but she couldn't win. How is this possible? But as she gets ready to fly back down, she looks up to the sky. She sees something flying. It was small, thin, but it was housed with radiation that made Shinomura nearly drool, and it was going straight for Godzilla. The Shinomura panicked. If Godzilla absorbed the radiation like the Shinomura could, then it would be impossible to stop him. But if she instead absorbed the radiation, then she would be unstoppable. So the Shinomura devises a plan. She flies toward the nuclear warhead and grabs it into her jaws, disabling it of flight by cutting off the thruster. Hopefully it wouldn't detonate, as Shinomura has seen these things before. Godzilla tried to shoot her down out of the air, but the Shinomura dodged and cut off her tail that regenerated into its own body that stalled Godzilla. Hopefully it would buy her some time. The Shinomura takes to the skies with the warhead in her mouth, wanting to get a safe distance away from Godzilla before absorbing it. After making landfall on a nearby coastal island, she lays the warhead down and begins absorbing of its radiation. But as she does, she makes a terrible mistake. The warhead was still active and very explosive. Godzilla is coming straight for her, about to unleash the atomic breath in the seas, only for a massive nuclear explosion to boom throughout the sky, a mushroom cloud swallowing Shinomura. Godzilla searches for the Shinomura, but can't find her. He assumes she's dead, since there isn't even a fraction of her body. With a roar of victory, Godzilla absorbs the remaining radiation and departs into the sea, having won this battle. But Godzilla has made a terrible mistake. Instead of thoroughly searching, he ends up missing the body of the Shinomura, being a pale color, nearly dead. But she was still alive. After weeks of her body attempting to regenerate, she finally awoke. The last thing she saw was glancing toward Godzilla before the white light took her into the heavens for a short amount of time. That's when she realized she can't die? She should have died in that explosion. She did, but how? How is she back? Because of the radiation she did end up absorbing, it triggered her regenerative abilities, being way stronger now. So whatever explosion she takes, she can pretty much shrug it off. With this power, Shinomura found a new goal. It was a side goal she had, but she knew she had to do it soon. Kill Godzilla. It would take her years to fully recover, and then she would need to get stronger to beat Godzilla, as he would get stronger too as the years come by. So she made a plan. Find the biggest stockhouse of radiation and absorb everything she could. The Arctic. She arrives only a few days later, finding the Guardian who is living there, Abzu, a weak and kinda titan, but she's able to dispatch him really quickly and then absorb his power. She stays there for years and years, and when she hears an alpha call, she knows it's time. Roll around the events of King of the Monsters. 2014 hasn't changed a bit, and Ghidorah released his alpha call for the Titans to destroy the surface and wipe humanity clean off the face of the earth, to make a global extinction event that would prove his worthiness to his family. The Titans begin their rampage. Scylla in Arizona, Behemoth in Rio, Tiamat flooding the states, while Rodan and Ghidorah tear through the states as more Titans awaken to cause more havoc. It was humanity's darkest hour. While Monarch made a plan to revive Godzilla, they soon found another Titan who wasn't obeying Ghidorah's alpha call, entering the battlefield. Shinomura. Madison has activated the Orca in Boston, and Mark Russell and the rest of Monarch's able to put together that somewhat has triggered the Orca, and now all of the Titans, including Ghidorah and the newly revived Godzilla, are making their way there. Ghidorah arrived first, terrorizing Madison, but before Ghidorah could even destroy the stadium, Shinomura crashed into the skies, stabbing Ghidorah in the back with her tail. She takes a pinker hue on her body and as well has a larger body in a more durable hide, stronger than her form from all those years ago, over tenfold. Shinomura pulled Ghidorah away, dodging the head's bites, and was only thrown off when they unleashed their gravity beams. Shinomura now knew to avoid them, as well saw him regenerate the wound. This would be difficult, but doable. The two were about to clash, only for a blast of blue atomic breath to send Ghidorah flying away, crashing into the ground. Shinomura could recognize that beam, even the charge-up sound, from anywhere. She whirled around to see him, Godzilla. He was bigger, bulkier, stronger, flashing an intimidating blue from his dorsal plates. Shinomura shook off her fear and got ready to fight, releasing a roar of challenge in the air. But Godzilla only huffed at her, then went back for Ghidorah. Shinomura nearly felt offended that Godzilla didn't even truly acknowledge her and roared at him again, this time getting his attention as Godzilla roared in fury, making Shinomura fly back in fear. Now she understood why he didn't care. She would lose to him, again, and she was still afraid. Shinomura backed off for a moment, giving Godzilla the opportunity to charge in for Ghidorah, the two sending a shockwave as Monarch and military forces attacked Ghidorah. While the fight raged on, Shinomura weighed out her options. If she helped Ghidorah, he would likely wipe out the world and kill Shinomura when he gets a chance. Despite Shinomura's quote-unquote evil motives, she didn't want to destroy the Earth. She only wanted Godzilla to pay. But then, if she helped Godzilla, he might kill her for daring to show her face again. But Godzilla wasn't a bad guy either. He might give her a chance to redeem herself. With her options open, she watches Ghidorah slam Godzilla into the ground with his mighty heads. She knew what she had to do. Godzilla unleashed the atomic breath at Ghidorah, sending the Hydra off. Without a moment to spare, the Shinomura flew back in, biting into Ghidorah's right head and dragging him across the ground, knocking Ghidorah off balance. Godzilla was surprised, and even more surprised when Mothra crashed in from the clouds and webbed Ghidorah's heads to a building. Mothra flew to Shinomura, using their telepathic communication to talk. Nearly 70 years of evolving came in handy when becoming a true Titan to gain their abilities, including somewhat telepathy. Mothra thanked Shinomura for turning to their side and promised to make it Shinomura's worthwhile. The two flying Titans flew for Ghidorah, who was on the ground from Godzilla, but then Shinomura sensed a sudden heat approaching her. She was too late then, as Rodan slammed Shinomura into a building and the two quickly got back up into the air. She had encountered this one before and knew that his pride was bigger than his head. The two clashed, biting and ripping into each other while Mothra and Godzilla battled Ghidorah. Rodan tried to rip out her scales, but Shinomura was durable enough to survive the attacks and regenerated any damage she could actually pull off. The only issue was Rodan's thunderclaps, which stunned Shinomura for a quick second. But she quickly overpowered him and threw him into several buildings, causing his body to get impaled by some rubble. Eventually, Shinomura pinned Rodan down as he suddenly began pleading for mercy. Shinomura was surprised, but decided to hear him out as he offered to work with them, claiming that Ghidorah would have killed him if he didn't follow. Shinomura found him to be a coward, telling him to stay out of the way and flew off to the main event. Rodan just stayed there. He didn't really want to fight. By the time she arrived, Mothra and Godzilla were both on their last breaths. Ghidorah had supercharged himself. Mothra took the chance to fly in an attempt to kill Ghidorah, who charged his lightning. Shinomura quickly saw this and blocked the beam, taking the damage and quickly regenerating. She looked back, now on the ground, to see Mothra blinding Ghidorah and stabbing the middle head, stunning it while the other two bit down onto her wings. Godzilla looked up and roared in rage as Mothra got her wings ripped off, and her small fragile body falls. Shinomura tried to save her, but Ghidorah sent her flying with his wings, seeing her flying in. The metalhead regained consciousness and grabbed Mothra's body into his mouth, tossing her into the air, and the three heads obliterated her with the gravity beams, her essence falling onto Godzilla, giving her one of the most gruesome deaths imaginable. Godzilla roared in agony from the physical and mental pain he's been through. Shinomura roared in rage that one of her allies that she just met was already gone, darting forward and began ripping through Ghidorah's wings, the Hydra returning the favor. The two were tied or canceled out the other with their attributes. But the only thing Shinomura had in her favor was their regenerating being faster than Ghidorah's body can comprehend. With every part of her ripped off, only took a second to regrow, and Ghidorah realized that he couldn't win like this. A test of mind, Ghidorah slammed his club tails into Shinomura's head, right into her brain, and rendered her helpless for a short amount of time. But it was plenty enough for the Hydra. Ghidorah bit down onto her body and flew up into the air and tossed her miles away, knocking her out for a short amount of time. But the short amount of time was enough for Godzilla to go thermonuclear, kill Ghidorah, and by the time she woke up, the entire city was gone, her body charged, and she saw a blue atomic breath get sent into the sky. She crawled herself over to find what was the outcome and saw Godzilla standing in the ruins, and Ghidorah was gone. Shinomura then had a choice to make. She could A, not challenge Godzilla and let him stay as Alpha, and she might be able to become part of his ranks. Or she could attack now and kill Godzilla, then become the Alpha herself. These options weighed down in her mind, and then the other Titans arrived. Titans that didn't really like her, especially Methuselah. They all growled and roared at her, getting ready to attack. She backed up, looking up to Godzilla in hope he would stop them, but he was already charging up his atomic breath. She should have known. Godzilla just didn't want to deal with her until Ghidorah was gone. They still didn't view her as a Titan. They just viewed her as a parasite like a Muto. And even then in their ranks they had a Muto. Fine then. Shinomura roared, leaping toward Godzilla and quickly ripped his gills apart. His atomic breath delayed and he quickly tried to throw her off. Shinomura leaped off and attacked the closest Titan, Scylla. She bit into Scylla's leg, winding up and ripping her leg off in the process and tossed her toward Godzilla, knocking them both down and taking them out for a short amount of time. Behemoth, Methuselah, and Rodan all surrounded her. She stabs Behemoth with her tail right into his head as he runs in, killing the mammoth and ripping out his tusks with their jaws. Rodan and Methuselah quickly backing off in fear. The Queen Muto watched in the back, wanting to see the winner of this outcome and would likely be on the living side. She wasn't loyal to anyone just yet. She turned back to Godzilla, who stood up, tossing Scylla off. The two roared at each other, Shinomura using the tusk to stab Godzilla in the stomach, slowing him down and began constricting his neck with her tail. Godzilla begins charging his atomic breath, and Shinomura needs to act fast. Right before he shot his atomic breath, Shinomura split herself up into thousands of pieces that entered Godzilla's wounds. Godzilla roared in pain, not knowing what to expect. The other Titans watched in fear as suddenly Godzilla exploded. Shinomura's little pieces reformed, and Shinomura rose off the fleshy pile, having used her ability to reform and divide to her advantage by entering Godzilla and reforming inside his weakened body where he wasn't strong enough to endure the reformation. What she did was merciful compared to what else she could have done. Shinomura turned to the remaining Titans, roaring at them to bow, but one of them still had spark. Rodan. He roared in defiance, ready to challenge for the Alpha status. Seriously? Whatever. Shinomura leaped forward and killed him with her tail, ripping his neck open and killing Rodan before he could even realize he was dead. Methuselah, the Queen Muto, and still missing her leg, quickly bowed in fear, having just watched 3 of their fellow Titans and their Alpha die before them. Shinomura then actually comprehended what she had done. She killed him! She won! She killed Godzilla! Shinomura roared into the sky, roaring in victory, feeling only pride and joy in her strength and power as the Titans submitted in fear of their new Alpha. Monarch began speculating of what type of chaos Shinomura would cause. What was surprised when Shinomura called off the Titans too, causing havoc, and went back into hibernation immediately. Shinomura had no quarrel with humanity and didn't want the world to burn, so she would take the role as Alpha seriously and leave the Titans and stuff like greater. I don't know. She had some plan. She didn't really know what to do since she didn't really think this far ahead. Scylla was too scared of Shinomura to stay deep underground to not get attacked, somewhere in the underground tunnels leading to the Hollow Earth. Methuselah returned to Germany where he rested. The Queen Muto went to Hollow Earth to stay awake while not causing trouble for Shinomura. Every other Titan remained asleep except one. After about a year, suddenly thousands of earthquakes came out of nowhere across the entire globe. And somewhere in space, on the moon, an astronaut who was checking on the ship's engine suddenly turned around to Earth and decided to call in.
Hey, am I seeing things or did South America just vanish?
The astronaut asked. He wasn't seeing things. The entire continent was now underwater, completely destroyed. This caught the other Titans' attentions and some made their way to investigate. Shinomura caught up with Bunyip and Sekhmet, who were coming to see the commotion, and were met with the entire continent missing! South America. Missing. How? There was still some of the continent remaining, but chunks is floating around as the military vessels tried to find anything that survived. Monarch began investigating, trying to find out what did this, as the Titans sounded less likely. They needed something to help win, as whatever did this was way too powerful. But the bad news only continued, as the sinking of South America caused a hollow vortex to be ripped open, and alert underground monsters, including the Queen Muto. The Queen Muto, or Barb, arrived to the surface to investigate, swimming up to the surface out of the water, only for a massive sharp-ended thorn to strike her chest and send her flying out of the ocean, leaving her as an exploded mess. Shinomura was in here and saw this, and wheeled back and was enraged, ordering Bunyip to run and have Sekhmet nearby. As they continued searching, a Hollow Earth wildlife began emerging, sinking ships and attacking random creatures. Warbats, skullcrawlers, drowned vipers, everything was escaping as the Hollow Earth began flooding. She ordered Sekhmet to begin burning anything that escaped the vortexes, and she released an alpha call, ordering every Titan to wake up to brace themselves for whatever was to come, and to deal with any escaping creatures from the Hollow Earth. Aquatic Titans like Tiamat, Nikika, and the Murderfish all arrived to where South America used to be and began killing everything, eating skullcrawlers and drowned vipers, while Sekhmet burned any warbats that made it into the air. Shinomura kept looking for the culprit, but she didn't find anything. For whatever reason, this Titan wasn't revealing himself. But why? Meanwhile, Monarch has decided to greenlight an operation. Operation Powerhouse. They had been working on it for a while now and hadn't known what material to use, but it's the end of the world, so they created the Beast Gloves. That's right, gloves. For Kong. Kong was transported off Skull Island, where he was given 2 gloves made out of titanium and enforced with Godzilla's hide. Strongest weapon on Earth, pretty much. They needed everything they could. Kong assembled his hawk and was transported overseas near South America's former location. It was just time, as Monarch began finding the waters spike in cold temperatures. People on ships that had transported Kong reported that the waters were freezing. Shinomura and the other Titans noticed this too and landed to investigate. She looked down through the ice, and the other Titans nearby reported that no more Hollow Earth wildlife was escaping. Something was stopping them. Shinomura broke the ice to peer in, spotting something glowing. Suddenly, something massive rammed Shinomura head first, breaking through the ice and arriving on the layers of frozen ice. Looking up to face Shima with Scar King on her back. Shinomura quickly ordered them to stand down, but Shima charged anyway, Scar King roaring. The entire continent singing and had shaken up everything, including Scar King's prison. Now he's here. Kong arrived on the ice along with Sekhmet. Kong beat his chest, roaring at Scar King, knowing this one was a bad guy from how he was treating Shima. And also, Gia's like, yo, that's a bad guy, so that helps. Along with that, he noticed a crystal and how it was controlling Shima. Shinomura and Sekhmet flew in, Sekhmet breathing fire across Shima and Scar King while Shinomura ripped into Shima's legs, knocking her over. Kong leaped in, punching Scar King right in the face, knocking him clean out. Shima got up, biting down on Sekhmet's tail and pulling him back onto the ground, and then crushed his back into pulverized bones and charged up her frostbite cannon at Shinomura, only for Kong to stop Shima with the crystal. Shima slammed her head into the ground in pain. Shima looked up at the new wielder. Shinomura watched Kong, ready to attack if he replaced Scar King's role. Scar King looked up as Kong gripped the crystal tightly, Scar King leaping up to grab the crystal. Shima roared and bit down on Scar King's arm, nearly ripping it off and pulled Scar King away, slamming him onto the ice and was ready to kill him. Kong walked over, telling Shima not to kill him, and he decided to crush the crystal. Shima did deserve this mind control. Kong offered Scar King his hand, the red ape looking up in anger. Sadly, Scar King hasn't changed and leaped up, pushing Kong down, only for Shima to impale her tail into his back, then toss him into the sky. About 30 minutes later, he would crash. Kong thanked Shima and turned to Shinomura, the two glaring at each other. They were both Alpha Titans, meaning Shinomura would need to think about this fight very carefully. Shinomura demanded them to bow with a roar, but Kong roared in defiance back. Shinomura was mad, but she knew Kong wasn't a threat. She did her best to communicate with Kong, telling him that there was a bigger threat than here than just the two of them combined. Just as she says this, the ice begins shattering, and Shinomura taking off to the sky, while Kong leaps onto Shima's back as the entire frozen surface breaks. Shima began paddling away to a small landmass floating in the water, Shima beginning to freeze the water to provide land. Shinomura looks around, only for a massive fist to send her flying out of the air. Shinomura gets several of her bones broken, but she regenerates the damage lands on the ground, looking to the water where the demon has revealed himself. Amulek. He towered over them, having absorbed nearly every inch of plant life that was in South America, where his body was now truly a titan compared to titans themselves. His upper half raised himself up out of the sea, already being over 6 billion kilometers tall. his full body mass being over 10 billion kilometers tall, weighing over 80 billion tons. Without Behemoth in the way, Amulek had absorbed the entire rainforest of Rio, and without Godzilla or Rodan, he had practically no threat that could breathe fire. With Sekhmet gone, it only made it better. He now was perfect to kill everyone. Amulek's size was the only thing that changed. Having still 4 limbs to lift himself up, I had 8 bulky limbs going up his body with thousands of thick vines as well, giving Kong memories of the Kraken. He laughed at the team before him, having not only grown in size but power. He had gained thousands of abilities, one being telepathy. Amulek told him that his plan was for the whole Earth Wildlife to kill them, but when seeing it failed, he was going to finish them off once and for all, only for Scar King Shima to arrive. Sadly, the Scar King failed too, but it didn't affect his plan. Amulek had killed Dehika, Tiamat, and all of the murder fish already and was consuming all of the dead Titan's radiation. He had power beyond any Titan in history. This was his plan all along. After learning Godzilla was dead, he doubted Shinomura could find him, and he was correct, absorbing all of the foliage in South America before sinking it, causing a hollow earth vortex to be ripped open further than it was supposed to, opening hundreds until they joined together, forming a massive vortex nearly a quarter size of the entire continent that was originally there. After that, he killed anything that approached, then killed all of the other Titans nearby. After he was done with these Titans, then he would kill everything and everyone, and everything and everyone would become him. He would be the last thing that could think on this planet. Shinomura was horrified, but knew she had to win. Kong got ready, Shima roaring and the hawk circling above, trying to find a weakness. Amulek sent his 4 top limbs flying forward, causing Shima and Kong to dodge, barely moving that away while Shinomura split herself into millions of pieces and began swarming Amulek. The plan was to explode Amulek like what she did to Godzilla, but Amulek wasn't that dumb. He slapped over a third of her body swarm away, obliterating them and causing Shinomura to lose a third of her body mass. Not good. She reformed her body to make sure that she didn't repeat this mistake, while Kong leaped up onto one of Amulek's legs, punching and ripping off pieces of plant tissue on his bulky limb. Amulek used his closest limb to grab Kong off, about to crush him, only for Shima to shoot her frostbite cannon at his wrist, causing his connection to the arm to fail. Amulek was enraged, but wasn't looking as Shinomura stabbed her tail into one of his eyes. Amulek roaring in pain, slapping her away and stumbled. The hawk's sharp eyes looked down to where Amulek was standing, noticing a key detail. Shima shot her frostbite cannon at Amulek's face, but he managed to block it in time with one of his limbs and struck her with some of his thick vines. Shinomura flew back in, shattering the ice-covered limb, causing Amulek some pain, but he regenerated the damage since he had so much mass to give. Kong, meanwhile, was climbing up Amulek's back while he was distracted, now on top of the massive beast's neck, ready to strike, only for something to pin him down. Kong looked up, punching off a beast made of plants, the spawns of Amulek. It shredded into Kong, but he punched its head hard enough to smash it to pieces. More spawns of Amulek growing out of his body. Amulek wasn't an idiot, as his plan was for Kong to let himself up and there use his children to knock Kong off and kill him from this height. Meanwhile, Amulek grabbed Shinomura out of the air, throwing her miles away and focused on Shima, the massive ice titan looking like an ant to him. And that was entertainment, more like a speck of dust. Amulek grabbed her before she could shoot her beam, tightening around her, ready to crush her body and kill this titan once and for all. But then, Amulek felt his sides to the blaze, releasing Shima to turn to witness to what or who was attacking him. The other titans had arrived. Yamata no Orochi was swimming in the water, shooting fire out of his head while Typhon flew in from behind Amulek and shredded it into his neck, coming to assist Kong. Amulek went to strike Orochi, only for butting up Scylla and Leviathan, who all jumped out of the water, weighing down the arm and giving Orochi the time to set a quarter of his body on fire. Amulek was enraged at all the titans daring to revolt against him, clearly being the strongest out of them all, using one of his remaining arms to slice off his burning body for it to regenerate anew. But his mass shrinked a bit, but it wouldn't matter at this rate. He ordered them all to bow and kill his enemies, but the titans knew that if Amulek lived, then he would just kill them all. Why not go out swinging? Shinomura flew in, slicing off a part of Amulek's face off as Typhon held off the spawns of Amulek, and Kong got ready to rip out Amulek's brain, his only weakness. But Amulek at the last second emitted a psychic pulse, causing all of the titans' minds to go haywire and make them freeze. If this continued, they'd all die. No military could get in without their brains getting fried instantly. They needed something that doesn't have a brain to attack. But luckily, I was here. I didn't say anything. Well, good thing that Ibivin Cybernetics had been cooking something up in case the Shinomura went rogue. After snatching up the Rodan corpse and using the skeleton to power the machine, flying in at Mach 8 was Mecha Rodan. Flying in at Amulek's face and emitting a thunderclap that stunned Amulek from the loud sound, releasing everyone. Responsive, Amulek managed to knock Kong into the ocean and began ripping Typhon apart. Kong crashed into the water, managing to not hit the remaining ground. He looked around, going toward one of Amulek's legs to climb back up, but looked down where Amulek was standing. The ground was glowing. No, it wasn't even the ground, it was the vortex! Amulek was standing right over it. That's what the hawk noticed, but speaking of the hawk, Kong had no idea where he went. Kong swam to the limb to get some air, calling Shinomura down while Shimonorochi froze and burned each of Amulek's arms. Kong told Shinomura that Amulek was standing right above a vortex that could fit his size. Their best chance was to knock Amulek into the vortex and to seal it off. Shinomura understood and released an order to the other Titans. Bake the beast sink. The Titans understood, Leviathan and Bunyip ripping into one of Amulek's legs, which made him sink down a bit. But Amulek grabbed Bunyip and crushed him quickly. But Mecha Rodan was circling around, shooting fire with Orochi. Shimo swam under Amulek, shooting his limbs, and the other Titans began targeting them, shattering the legs with brute strength. Amulek was enraged and tried to snatch Mecha Rodan out of the air, but his body was burning everywhere, his movement becoming desperate. Eventually, he snatched up Orochi and tossed him into Mecha Rodan, making them both sink into the ocean. He used all of his remaining arms to crush them into oblivion. There goes their strongest. Amulek focused back on the Titans around him, grabbing Kong, Leviathan, and Baphomet out of the water, lowering Baphomet and Leviathan into his mouth and consuming them. Kong tried to free himself, but the grip was too much and was about to enter his mouth. This was the end. But flying in from the west was the hawk, stabbing his claws into Amulek's eye. But before Amulek could kill him, an ear-bleeding roar hit Amulek, making him shriek out and start tweaking out. Kong looked to see the Titan he hasn't battled yet, but would have to save Skull Island if Shinomura had died. Camazotz. The hawk had seen the vortex and made a plan, going back to Skull Island to get the rest of his kind and discovered Camazotz, who brought Ghidorah Storm here to allow him to fight in the day. After some convincing and lots of lying, Camazotz ended up working with the hawk and came here to help against Amulek. Kong grinned. Camazotz's Hellstorm attacking the spawns of Amulek to get to the brain. Kong was dropped into the water, seeing the Titans getting close to Amulek falling down. Amulek noticed this and tried to move out of the way, but Shima was draining all of her life, even her life force, to freeze Amulek's waist, having the legs fall into the vortex. Amulek shrieked. In one last attempt to survive, he grabbed every Titan nearby. Shimo, Camazotz, the Hellswarm, and all the other remaining Red Hawks, and the Hawk himself, who were all sucked into the vortex with him. Mecha Rodan's twitching body swam over, arriving at the vortex and self-detonated, causing the vortex to collapse in on itself, causing Amulek to be turned into solid rock, along with the other Titans who gave their lives. Kong swam to the surface, coughing up blood as he was covered in scars. He climbed up onto the remaining landmass to lay down. Shinomura flew out of the water, regenerating the damage. She and Kong were the only survivors. Shinomura landed near Kong, bowing her head to him in respect for his bravery. The Hollow Earth was uninhabitable, since now a third of the room was just filled with water, and since the gravity was constantly shifting, forcing water to spread and wipe out any living thing, making it nearly impossible to survive. The Iwi tribe had gone to the surface, where they were relocated with Monarch's assistance, where Gia was able to live with her own again. All of the remaining Titans stayed asleep, but there was barely anyone left. Kong spent the rest of his life on Skull Island since the storm surrounding it was gone because of Camazotz. He lay down against a mountain, closing his eyes to let out a tight breath. The day was won. Right? But wait, what is this? A portal opened up to the shores of Skull Island. Kong groaning and getting up, his beast glove still on. Kong looked forward as something was exiting the portal. Some things. Massive crystal creatures known as the Crystalks. Kong beats his chest and roars, peering in the portal to see... Oh no.